Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time. Hi, it's Sean, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation. This is part 2, of course, of how you should not discard a controversial idea. In the last episode, that's what we did. We went to the first topic, which is, you should keep that controversial idea. And now in this part, we're going to look at how you can apply that idea, that objection. When we are creating a product, when we're creating an article, when we're creating a sales page, we don't think of the objection in such a big way. We might think, okay, we have to have a uniqueness here. We have to have some kind of problem, some kind of solution, some kind of benefit. Objections don't seem to rise to the top of whatever we're doing. And so what we are going to do in this episode is we're going to look at the product, we're going to look at a sales page, and we're going to look at something else. And I can't remember right now, but we'll get to it. So let's get started, shall we? Here's where it all began. And this whole podcast came from a question which David Green asked. And David Green is a member of 5000 BC. He's a really great guy, draws cartoons, writes really well, and he's a good friend. And he asked this question because David is a mortgage lender and he wants to create an information product. He wants to create some kind of book or booklet. And he was struggling a lot with it. The reason why he was struggling is, first of all, there are so many topics under mortgage lending. There are just dozens and dozens of topics. But he also gets one question on a regular basis, which is, how do I get the lowest interest rates? Now, that's the question that recurs, and it's one of the most controversial of all. And it's controversial because the lowest interest rate is not the best thing for you. However, it is controversial, and this is why it needs to be tackled first. David could start off the book with, how do I get the lowest interest rates, and other questions that cause mortgage problems. See what happened there? The biggest objection is, look, I don't want to know about the other stuff. How do I get the lowest interest rates? But now, by taking on that objection, putting it up front and center, what we have, it gets the client's attention. Now, David said that he doesn't want to take on that lowest rate question, but if it keeps showing up, then he's got little choice, especially with an information product. Now, when he's in a consultation with a client, it's easier to show that client, this is what I can do, this is why it works for you, etc. But it doesn't work necessarily with an information product. And at least this is a good shot. You create an information product where you can get right to the point. And once they have been hooked with the first issue, which is the problem with the lowest interest rates, then David can go deep into that objection and then choose to take on the other objections or tackle other main points which are interesting, which are important. This attention to the objection, however, makes sure that the client locks into the topic, that the client stays focused. And David can diffuse these objections by giving them case studies or by giving them material that substantiates why it's a problem. But he brings up that counter argument. This is what I need you to think about when you're creating an information product. The information product might not be a book. It might be just a booklet. It might just be a short audio or some kind of webinar or web conference. But think of, how can I take on the biggest objection, the objection that I get from my clients on a regular basis? And then how can I make that the title of my book, of my web conference, of whatever I'm doing? because that gets the attention of the client. That's the thing that's on their mind all the time. And so getting to the objection first is a really good practice, especially if the objection is recurring all the time. So this is the first thing that we're going to cover with regards to getting the objection, how to use it in an information product. But what happens when it's a topic, like an article that you're writing? This takes us to somewhat of the second part of this episode, which is how to use the power of the objection when you're writing articles. About 2 weeks ago, the article writing course began, and what happens in the article writing course is that people really want to do well. They really want to get at the other end of that course 3 months later and want to write great articles. So we have to go through some fundamentals, and it's kind of the preparation stage where you learn to write outlines. Here's where the problem lies. I take about 10, 15 minutes, and I can write 2 or 3 outlines, sometimes even less than that. And the client will take 45 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour to write 3 outlines. And you think, what is the problem here? The obvious answer might be, well, they're just starting out, you've been writing articles for a long time, and that's the difference. And that's not the difference. The difference is they are thinking. Yes, you heard me right. They're thinking. They're putting thought into it. And the problem is that they're putting in too much thought into it. You don't need 60 minutes to do an outline, to create an outline. But how do I get this message across? Because if I bring that message to them that you shouldn't be thinking, they'll go, no. Because they want to write great outlines. They want to get me, the teacher, to say, wow, that was a great outline. That was a good assignment. You notice what's happening yet again. This is not very different from David's situation. So if I say that thinking is a waste of time, then immediately the hackles go up. It's like, what? Wait, thinking is a waste of time. Thinking is like really good. And it would be nice to skirt the topic and not take it on completely because, hey, they're already doing something. You don't want them to think more about the thinking process. But that's the whole point. The point is that when there is a big objection, and it doesn't matter what you're doing, what article you're writing, there are always going to be big objections. And you think, well, let's take on this big objection because it's controversial. It gets your client's attention. And what I show them is that they're going through a muscle memory exercise, that the outlines that they're going to write in this preparatory phase, they're not going to be used later. I mean, people think, yes, I'm going to use these outlines later. But if you write outlines long enough, you know that outlines are like, vegetables. You cut them today and you can't use them 3 weeks later. They just don't work. It sounds like a really bizarre example to give, but that's how it is. The energy that you have for an outline today can't be put into an article 3 weeks later. So really what's happening is we're going through the process of learning how to write outlines. And the goal should be, how can I get this outline out as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible, and so it ticks all the boxes. But instead, people start to think because they want to get the assignment right. They want to not look foolish in any way. And that's exactly where you can use controversy to get their attention, to make that point. And then I show them how thinking is very important in the creation stage. So you're thinking, well, what am I going to put in this book? And you spend lots of time. Most writers, most authors, most musicians, most whatever, in the preparatory stage, they spend a lot of time. But there's also this other stage that we're going through right now. We're learning how to get our muscle memory going. So we're learning how to write outlines at super fast speed. And that's the crux of the issue. Getting the precise details and the accurate details in the articles, that's not the crux of the issue. So to make a long story short, what I have to do is write an article that seems controversial. And once the client starts to read it, of course their hackles go up, but then I can bring across the points that I want to make, and what we see is this dramatic drop in time used, in energy burned, and as a result they start to enjoy their work and they get better outlines and hence better articles down the line. So what are we really doing here? What we're really doing is we're looking at the article that we are about to write, and you're going, what is the biggest objection that comes up every single time? And you can take this with any article that you're writing, and there will be a big objection, and sometimes or many times you can make that the title of your article and start building from there and then work from that point on. So the objections become very crucial when you're writing an article or creating an info product. But as I said, there was a third one, and now I remember it was about the sales page. So let's go and see how we would use this on a sales page. Again, the principle is pretty much the same, but let's see the application so that you can use it for your sales page as well. From time to time, Renuka and I will go to this little French bistro. It's in Remuera, which is another suburb. And we were sitting at the cafe, and my friend Vanessa, I don't see her for like 6 months at a time, and then she just shows up on precisely the same day that we show up. Anyway, so Vanessa and her daughter Scarlett, they happened to be there at the same time. So they were having their coffee and their French pastries, and then we were having our coffee, and then I was drawing on the iPad, and when they were leaving, Vanessa and Scarlett showed up, and they were both admiring the cartoons. At that point, Vanessa turns to me and she says, "Wow, I really like your work. I can't even draw a straight line." Did you notice the objection in that statement? So many people have the same objection, that on a cartooning sales page, it needs to come up really quickly. Now, if you read the brain audit and you understand the sequence of the 7 red bags, well, it starts off with the problem, the solution, the target profile. Then we go to objections. So it's like 4th in the ranking. But if you go to the psychotactics.com/DaVinci, you'll notice something quite weird. Very shortly after the headline and a little text, there's a video that suggests exactly that. It says, "I couldn't draw a straight line." So there is a video and there is a caption about one of our clients who couldn't draw a straight line, and he talks about the straight line and the straight line and the straight line and straight. So that's the biggest objection. That's the thing that people say every time you tell them, "Oh, you can draw cartoons as well," and they go, "No, can't draw a straight line." Now, this isn't to suggest that every sales page needs the objection to show up super quick. But if the objection is going to come in the way, and it's going to come up right away, then there's no reason why you should go around that objection and wait for position number 4. Instead, you should go, okay, let's start off with a headline and then go straight to the objection. With David's information product, the objection is overpowering. This point of interest rates, that is overpowering. That needs to be tackled. With the article about thinking is a waste of time, you want to create that change in behavior. And again, it's an objection. They don't think that thinking is a waste of time, and so then you have to demonstrate it. And finally, with this third one on the sales page, all sales pages tend to bring up objections. In some cases, it's hard to get people to believe what you're offering, like cartooning, and it's hard for them to believe that they could draw exceedingly well in just 6 months. So the objection needs to shoot up right to the top, or at least close to the top. And that's the power of objections. They allow you to take on a very controversial topic and to work your way into the hearts of your audience. Remember, your audience is usually saying, "Show me the proof." They might shoot you down completely at first, but you have to look beyond the obvious. Perhaps all they're asking for is for you to diffuse perhaps completely remove their objections. This is all about objection, objection, objection. And when you have something that's controversial, it is worth the trouble to take it on. So this brings us to the end of the second part of this episode. It's a little shorter, the second one. And we started out with James Hutton and how he talked about sedimentary rock and how it was very controversial and how he was called an atheist and how he was called a fool and thrown out. But the controversial ideas are often very powerful. In fact, taking them on, showing proof, that's really what it's all about. And that was part one, which was why you should not discard a controversial idea. Then in part two, we saw how examples, how case studies, how practical demonstrations, they reduce the pushback. I told you a bit about the brain audit, and there was this whole problem with the problem, which is in the brain audit, you talk about the problem and the solution, and people were pushing back. So by demonstrating that people react first to the problem and then to the solution, by giving examples, by giving case studies, it took away that pushback and allowed people to absorb a completely different idea. But the third thing was the applications. And we looked at the article, we looked at a sales page, and we looked at an info product. And in every case, there are going to be objections. And some of them are going to be overpowering, and we're going to try and hide them, and we shouldn't. We should bring them to the top and then go from that point on. That's the doorway, you could call it the doorway into the client's attention. That's the objection. It's really powerful. It doesn't deserve the fourth position. Bring it to number one. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. So what is the one thing that you can do? It's very likely that you're going to write an article sometime soon. I don't know what the article is about, but I can tell you that every article has at least 1 or 2 or 3 objections. Forget the 2 and 3 objections. Take on the biggest objection. And how can you turn that around? How can you start off, how can you lead with the objection and then bring the client around? You're going to do it anyway in the article. You're just going to do it later. But how can you do this right at the top? Try it. Look at the article, say, what is the objection, and then bring it right to the top. Make that your headline, and then drive the article from there. And that's how you'll get the attention of the client. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. So what's happening in Psychotactics Land? Last week, we were selling the Info Products home study. That was all sold out, which was a good thing. But now we have on the 23rd of September, Uniqueness. And I know I kind of promised you an episode on uniqueness. Now, if I'm going to show you how to do this uniqueness, why buy a home study? Well, the home study gives you a much better understanding of the whole sequence of the strategy. It goes in depth. I can show you in the next episode, the next podcast, how to go about creating your uniqueness. And that's what I'll do in one of these episodes to come. But if you're interested in really going deep into uniqueness, because uniqueness is the one thing that we've found works, well, not better, but it's very important to have. It just marks you out differently from your competition. And so if you're keen on that, 23rd September is your date. You have to go to the website, and I'll talk about the website in a second, but you have to go to the website, and 23rd of September is when we're selling a very limited number of copies. I think the number is 35. For the home study versions, it's just 35. So 23rd of September is that one, and on the 13th of October is the big one, which is the article writing self-study. So there you have it, 23rd of September and 13th of October. So go on the list and make sure that you're on that list, otherwise you won't get any notification. And that brings us to the website. I'm writing an article on how this website took 3 years, but it's over. If you've been listening to this podcast since 2016 or have been listening to it in sequence, well, this is it. It's over. It's out there. Go to the website, go to psychotactics.com, and I promise you, you will really love it. No one I know who has gone there and said, oh yeah, nice website. They come back quite excited. You can try this as well. Go to the website, go to psychotactics.com and put / and just like type in your name or something like that. And it'll take you to a 404 page. Try that. That's a lot of fun. So the 404 page is page not found. Go to psychotactics.com / whatever your name is. And of course that page doesn't exist. And you'll enjoy yourself on the website. So that's me, Sean D'Souza, saying bye for now. Bye-bye. Still listening? One of the things that we do every time we finish off something important is we always celebrate. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember this sound? How about that? No, you don't. Well, that was the sound of this bottle of red wine. And in 2002, when I first wrote The Brain Audit, we went to Lake Taupo and I presented to this audience, and about 35 out of 50 people bought the book, which was still a PDF and quite expensive back then. And so we celebrated. And this is what we do for everything. It doesn't have to be a big celebration. In this case, the developers, and that's stresslessweb.com. They're in a suburb close by, 35 minutes, which is quite far for us. But anyway, we drove there and we went out to dinner, and it's not over. There's another surprise for them. But here's the point. The point is that a lot of people, when they get their little win, they don't celebrate it. They just go on to the next win and the next win and the next win. And Renuka has been very adamant about celebrating the wins. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. You can go out for an ice cream. You can go out for anything. But if you don't have that memory, if you're going to put it for a week later, a month later, it doesn't happen to begin with. And secondly, there's no memory. Life is just about all of these losses and wins, and I think you should celebrate. Well, Renuka would be adamant about it. That's how we go about it at Psychotactics. We achieve something and then we celebrate in our own little way, but we always celebrate on the day itself. We never postpone it. So that's your little snippet from Psychotactics land. Bye for now, and we'll see you in 5000 BC. Bye-bye.